the new transfer student, Makoto, is a rich kid, born with a silver spoon in his mouth. To take care of him, the homeroom teacher actually assigned my school's most popular beauty, my girlfriend, Willow, to be his study companion. What I didn't expect was that my girlfriend not only didn't refuse, she agreed without hesitation. At first, she was just helping him with his homework, but later on, Willow showed him around campus, went out with him to eat exclusive private dishes, and even stayed up late chatting with him on the phone for hours. Furious, I argued with her in a fit of rage, but what I never expected was, just to spite me, she actually kissed Makoto in public. Afterward, one of Makoto's buddies deliberately asked loudly, "Hey Willow, our campus queen, how did it feel? Kissing our Makoto, way more exciting than being with someone else, right?" The next second, Willow looked straight at me, her face full of provocation, and said, "No comparison at all, Makoto wins completely." Chapter 1. Willow and I were known across the entire school as a match made in heaven. She was the campus queen, the girl everyone admired and chased after. With her slender figure and strikingly beautiful face, she had an almost aggressive kind of beauty. She always wore bright red dresses, both alluring and pure at the same time, captivating countless boys. But in her eyes, there had always only been me. We grew up together as childhood sweethearts. At 1 year old, during a traditional grabbing ceremony, we reached for each other. At 7, our families arranged an engagement. At 14, I gave her my first love letter. At 16, I confessed. At 18, we promised to get into the same university, until our senior year of high school, when a transfer student arrived, Makoto. When the homeroom teacher assigned one-on-one study partners, she deliberately paired Makoto with Willow and repeatedly emphasized, "If you refuse, then forget about dating George on campus." Willow, who was usually cold and distant, had no choice but to accept. At first, it was just normal tutoring, helping him study and showing him around campus. But gradually, something started to feel off. Makoto said he wanted to eat at a famous private restaurant on the west side of the city, the kind that required long lines. Willow skipped evening self-study just to buy it for him. Makoto posted on social media saying he was in a bad mood, and Willow stayed on the phone with him all night. Once, Makoto twisted his ankle while playing basketball, and Willow even climbed over the school wall to buy him medicine to reduce swelling and bruising. I was angry. I started bringing up breaking up with her again and again. The first time I said it over the phone, she went silent for a long time. Then I heard her breathing grow rapid. That night, during a heavy rainstorm, she ran to my apartment building and stood downstairs, completely soaked. For the entire night, her voice hoarse as she called my name over and over, begging for forgiveness. The second time, she skipped classes for an entire day, waiting outside my classroom. Her eyes were bloodshot as she handed me a thick letter, messy handwriting, but full of genuine emotion, pleading with me to get back together. But as it happened more and more, she seemed to finally figure out my weakness. I couldn't leave her, so she became more and more indifferent, from coming to me immediately, to a day later, 3 days later, a week later, until the 99th time. At the celebration party after the college entrance exams, Makoto said he wanted watermelon. Willow personally scooped out the sweetest, most central piece and handed it to him naturally, completely forgetting that I was right beside her, and that it was my favorite part too. All the disappointment and pain I had accumulated for so long finally burst. I looked at that bright red slice of watermelon and said in an eerily calm voice, "Willow, let's break up." She paused for a moment, then lazily lifted her eyes to look at me, her tone carrying a hint of impatience. Again, I didn't say anything else. I stood up and left the private room. This time, she didn't chase after me like before. She thought I was just throwing another tantrum, that in a few days, once I calmed down, I would return to her like always. So she even had the mood to stay behind, helping Makoto block drinks as everyone pressured him to drink more. But she didn't know. This time, I was serious. That heart of mine, stabbed over and over again until it was full of holes, had finally run out of warmth and hope. The first thing I did after getting home was open my computer. Without hesitation, I changed my college application from the Northern University we had promised to attend together to Southern University, thousands of miles away. Then, I began clearing out everything related to Willow, the limited edition figurines she gave me, our couple bracelets, handwritten notes filled with love confessions, stacks of photos. Each item carried a memory, sweet or painful, and now, all unbearably heavy. I stuffed them all into a huge cardboard box. Chapter 2. The next day, I carried that heavy cardboard box to her house. The housekeeper recognized me and led me straight into the living room. In the spacious living room, she and Makoto were sitting side by side on the soft carpet, playing the latest video game. They were sitting very close to each other. From time to time, Makoto let out excited shouts and cheers. "Willow, you're amazing. I've been stuck on this level forever. My gaze was instantly drawn to the oversized black t-shirt Makoto was wearing. That shirt was the limited edition merch of a male idol that I had spent days running around different malls to buy for her birthday last year. When she received it, she had thrown herself into my arms in delight, her eyes sparkling as she whispered in my ear, "This is from George, I'm going to frame it. No one is allowed to wear it." So this was what she meant by, no one is allowed to wear it. Just casually lending it to another guy. Makoto seemed to notice my gaze. He turned his head, saw me holding the box, and immediately broke into a bright, innocent smile. "George, you're here?" Willow invited me over to play games. She even cooked pasta for me herself. I accidentally spilled some juice, so she lent me this shirt to wear. You don't mind, right? Hearing that, Willow merely lifted her eyes lazily to glance at me. Her fingers continued moving skillfully over the controller as she spoke in a casual tone. "What are you here for? Didn't we break up?" Looking at how completely unconcerned she was, a wave of bitter self-mockery surged inside me. I remembered the first time I brought up breaking up, how she stood in the pouring rain, drenched and desperate, begging me for forgiveness. I remembered how, later on, it took her longer and longer to comfort me. I remembered how the last time, she had only sent a simple message, "Stop messing around. I'll take you out for hot pot tonight." Again and again, she tested my limits, and because I kept softening, kept forgiving her, she became more and more reckless. But what she didn't know was, even a camel will eventually collapse under the weight of the final straw. The 99th breakup. This time, I truly didn't want her anymore. I took a deep breath, suppressing the lump in my throat, and said, "Since we've broken up, there are some of your things I want to return." She pressed her temple, looking slightly irritated. "If you insist, you can just throw those things away. No need to bring them here." "Okay," I nodded without hesitation. Carrying that box filled with memories, I walked over to the large trash bin nearby and, without a trace of attachment, dumped the entire thing inside. The box hit the empty bin with a dull thud. I turned to leave. "Wait," Willow stopped me. "Take the stuff you left at my place too." She thought I would react like before, that her words would hurt me, that I'd question her with reddened eyes. "Willow, what do you mean?" And that she would take the opportunity to say, "Let's stop fighting," and everything would go back to normal. But I said nothing. I simply turned around in silence and began clearing away every trace of myself from this house, a place I had once known so well, almost like a second home. At the entrance, the pair of slippers she had specially bought, with my initials on them. On the kitchen shelf, the mug she had reserved just for me, printed with a cute puppy. On the living room sofa, the light gray blanket I used to wrap myself in. One by one, I found them, calmly tossing them into another empty box, as if I were just cleaning up meaningless trash. Meanwhile, she and Makoto started another round of their game. During a break, Makoto said he was thirsty and naturally picked up the glass she had been drinking from, taking a sip, and she, who used to be such a germaphobe that she wouldn't even touch milk tea I had drunk from, only glanced at him and said nothing. Then Makoto said he was hungry and wanted to eat pan-fried buns from a famous old shop far away. Without a word, Willow immediately stood up, grabbed her car keys, and walked out. I took all of this in. Yet my heart no longer hurt. All that remained was a numb, icy emptiness. Holding the box I had packed, I went upstairs, heading to Willow's room to take the last few things that belonged to me. Chapter 3. The moment I pushed open the door to her bedroom, a figure blocked my way. It was Makoto. There was undisguised provocation and smugness on his face as he said, "You've already broken up with Willow, so why are you still here trying to get attention?" I didn't want to argue with him. I replied calmly, "I'm just here to take my things and make a clean break." "A clean break?" Makoto sneered. "You think playing hard to get like this will make Willow look at you differently? She's already sick of you bringing up breakups every time. Weren't you just relying on her to come beg you for forgiveness? Besides clinging to her like a pathetic simp, what else can you do? I'll tell you this, anything you like, I'll take it away. Didn't you copy her college choices just to keep chasing her? No problem. I got accepted into Northern University too. Step by step, I'll take her from you completely, and you'll watch with your own eyes how you become my loser." I couldn't be bothered with his nonsense. Holding the box, I tried to walk past him, but he refused to let it go. He grabbed my arm, his words becoming even more vicious. "What? Did I hit a nerve? Nothing to say now. George, have some dignity, will you? The way you cling to her is disgusting. No wonder Willow finds you annoying. Looks like your parents didn't raise you right, ending up with someone like..." Slap. A sharp sound cut him off. I couldn't hold back anymore. I raised my hand and slapped him hard across the face. I could endure being wronged, but I would never allow anyone to insult my parents. He clutched his face, eyes wide in disbelief. Then rage surged through him as he raised his hand to hit me back. At that moment, the sound of the door opening and footsteps came from downstairs. Willow was back. A flash of calculation crossed Makoto's eyes. He suddenly grabbed my hand, let out a scream, and dragged me with him as he threw himself down the stairs. Ah! We both tumbled down the staircase, crashing heavily onto the floor below. My whole body felt like it had fallen apart. My forehead hit the edge of the stairs, and warm blood instantly began to flow. Makoto was hurt too, but he quickly struggled to sit up. He covered his face, revealing the clear handprint I had just left, and his eyes reddened instantly. In a weak voice, he said, "Willow." George suddenly rushed at me and hit me, then pushed me down the stairs. "I'm in so much pain." Willow looked at the chaotic scene before her, her expression turning dark in an instant. She strode over, first glancing at Makoto's reddened eyes, then shooting me a cold, piercing look as I struggled to get up. Her voice was icy. "George, what the hell are you doing? This is my house. Who gave you the right to lay hands on my guest?" Enduring the pain and dizziness, I tried to explain. "He insulted my parents first, that's why I..." "Enough." Willow didn't want to hear it at all. She cut me off sharply, her eyes filled with disappointment and impatience. "I don't want to hear any explanations. Butler, see him out." The housekeeper looked conflicted, but still stepped forward and gestured for me to leave. I watched as Willow turned away without hesitation, her face full of concern as she helped Makoto up, carefully guiding him to the sofa. She took out the first aid kit and gently cleaned his wounds, applying medicine with the utmost care, as if he were something fragile and precious. At that moment, it felt like someone had carved a piece out of my heart. The pain was so intense I could barely breathe. There was a time when she treated me the same way. Once, when I scraped my knee during PE class, she had turned pale with worry, immediately supporting me and rushing me to the infirmary, constantly comforting me. "George, it's okay, it won't hurt soon." Back then, her tenderness and concern belonged to me alone. But now, all of her care and patience were given to someone else. All my explanations and grievances got stuck in my throat, turning into a cold despair. I didn't say anything more. Dragging my battered and aching body, I walked out step by step. I went to the hospital alone. The diagnosis, a mild concussion and multiple soft tissue injuries. The doctor recommended that I stay for observation. During my stay, my phone kept vibrating. It was Makoto, sending me all kinds of taunting messages, along with photos and videos of Willow taking meticulous care of him. She fed him porridge, peeled apples for him, even accompanied him on walks in the garden. I watched expressionlessly, not replying to a single message. When your heart is already dead, no amount of provocation can hurt you anymore. After being discharged, the class organized a graduation gathering. I didn't want to go, but my friends insisted. The moment I stepped into the private room, I saw Willow and Makoto sitting closely together, inseparable. Makoto was smiling as he fed her a piece of fruit, and she didn't refuse. Chapter 4. When my classmates saw me, things got awkward. They quickly gathered around and asked in low voices, "George, what happened? You and Willow had another fight?" I calmly shook my head. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for everyone to hear. "It's not a fight. We broke up." "What? You broke up?" Everyone was shocked. Someone asked, "Why? Willow treated you so well." Another chimed in, "Yeah, in senior year when you got sick, she almost fought the homeroom teacher just to get you a long leave. And every holiday, the surprises she prepared for you made us all jealous. You two were the couple everyone thought would go from school uniforms to wedding dresses. Why break up right before graduation?" Listening to them list all the ways Willow had once been good to me, my heart felt like it was soaking in acid, swollen and aching. Yes, she had once treated me so well that I thought she would be my whole life. But it was exactly because of how good she once was, that her later indifference and favoritism felt even more cruel. I fell silent for a moment before speaking softly. "If it's not right, then we separate. No one is indispensable to anyone. Besides," my gaze drifted to Willow, who was pouring a drink for Makoto not far away. "Aren't the two of them doing just fine now?" Willow happened to hear that. She frowned and glanced at me, her expression complicated. For the rest of the night, she seemed to deliberately act out of spite, going overboard in treating Makoto well. She was attentive, considerate, almost inseparable from him. She thought she would see me get jealous, angry, or like before, unable to resist stepping in to interrupt them, but I didn't. I just sat quietly in a corner, occasionally chatting with people beside me. My gaze was calm, without a ripple, as if she were truly just an irrelevant stranger. This complete indifference, instead, stirred an unfamiliar panic in her heart. Subconsciously, she tried to walk toward me, but Makoto grabbed her arm. He leaned down and whispered something in her ear. Willow stopped, her brows tightly knit, and eventually sat back down. Soon, someone suggested playing Truth or Dare. After several rounds, Makoto lost. His dare was to kiss the most beautiful girl present for 3 minutes. All eyes instantly turned to Willow. Makoto's ears were red, but his gaze carried a trace of provocation as he walked straight toward her. The classmates gasped, whispering. "Isn't this inappropriate? George is still here." Makoto deliberately looked toward me in the corner and said, "George, you and Willow have already broken up. If I play a game and kiss her, you wouldn't mind, right?" His friend immediately chimed in. "Exactly, you're just the ex-boyfriend now. What right do you have to care who Willow kisses?" In an instant, all eyes turned to me like spotlights, including Willow's. Her gaze was deep, carrying an indescribable pressure, as if waiting for my reaction. I lowered my head, hiding every emotion in my eyes. My voice was so soft it was almost inaudible, yet it reached everyone clearly. "It really has nothing to do with me." With that single sentence, all boundaries were drawn. Willow's expression instantly turned extremely ugly. Rage surged in her eyes, along with a sense of defiance at being challenged. She suddenly let out a cold laugh, grabbed Makoto by the neck, and in front of everyone's shocked cries, stood on tiptoe and kissed him fiercely. The room erupted in suppressed gasps, then fell into a strange, death-like silence. I watched helplessly as the two of them kissed under the lights, unwilling to part. Makoto's hand even slid around her waist. My heart felt like it was being gripped tightly by an invisible hand, the pain almost spasming. I dug my nails into my palm, using all my strength to suppress the overwhelming bitterness and despair threatening to break me. After what felt like an eternity, the long kiss finally ended. Makoto's friend deliberately asked loudly, "Willow, our campus queen, how was it? Kissing our Makoto, way more exciting than with certain someone, right?" Her gaze swept over my pale face. The corner of her lips curved into a cold smile. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was clear and merciless. "No comparison at all. Makoto wins completely." Chapter 5. The smugness on Makoto's face was almost overflowing. After a few more rounds, Makoto lost again. This time, the punishment was to hold a girl in his arms the entire time while completing a task. Without even thinking, Makoto's gaze drifted toward Willow again. I couldn't stay any longer. I suddenly stood up, muttered, "I'm going to the restroom," to the friend beside me, and hurriedly escaped that suffocating private room. Hiding in the restroom, I splashed cold water on my face again and again, but the tears still slipped out uncontrollably, mixing with the water. It took a long time before I barely managed to calm down. Then I decided to leave early. Just as I reached the corner of the hallway, I heard familiar voices coming from the terrace. It was Willow and her closest friends. "Willow, wasn't that a bit too much just now?" George looked terrifyingly pale. "Aren't you going to check on him?" "Check on him?" Willow let out a cold scoff. "In a few days, he'll come begging me on his own. What's the big deal?" "True, once school starts at Northern University, he definitely won't be able to resist coming back to you by then. You just need to give him a little way out. Let him ask to get back together. After this lesson, he won't dare use breaking up to threaten you anymore." Not bad. Standing outside the door, it felt as if all the blood in my body froze instantly. My hands and feet turned ice cold. Without a trace of warmth, I quietly turned around and went downstairs alone. The summer night breeze brushed against me, yet it felt unbearably cold. Along the way, memories replayed in my mind like a silent film. Back then, if I so much as frowned, she would nervously ask if I was feeling unwell. Back then, whenever a guy gave her a love letter, she wouldn't even glance at it. She would reject it immediately, then run over to me and say proudly, "George, I rejected another one today. Praise me." I had long grown used to her kindness, used to being her one and only. So when did things start to change? It started when Makoto appeared. Again and again, she broke her own principles for him, ignoring my feelings. It wasn't that I couldn't see how special Makoto was to her. It wasn't that I couldn't tell she treated him differently. I just clung to the last bit of hope, using breakups again and again to test her, to try to hold on. But all it did was make her see me as annoying and childish. So this was the truth, when I was no longer her only one. Everything I did became wrong. Before I knew it, I had already reached near my apartment building. From afar, I saw a deliveryman standing at the entrance. Looks like the admission letters had arrived. I took a deep breath and was about to walk over, when I saw a familiar figure standing in front of the deliveryman. It was Willow. She was holding one of the envelopes, the one clearly printed with the Southern University logo, and was about to open it. My heart tightened suddenly. Almost instinctively, I stepped forward and snatched the admission letter back from her hand. "What are you doing?" My voice carried a faint tremor, but more than that, it was cold and guarded. Willow's hand remained suspended midair, momentarily stunned by my overreaction. Then her expression turned indifferent as she said, "The deliveryman said no one was home. You listed me as your emergency contact, so he asked me to sign for it." Chapter 6. Emergency contact. It felt like a fine needle pricked my chest, leaving behind a faint ache. That setting had been made a long time ago, so long ago that I had almost forgotten. Back when she was my entire world. It felt only natural to tie everything important in my life to her. I lowered my gaze, hiding the turmoil in my eyes, and said, "Emergency contact." I forgot to change it before. I'll update it later. I didn't look at her again. I quickly picked up a pen from the nearby table and, stroke by stroke, clearly signed my name on the receipt, George. From this moment on, my life would have nothing to do with her anymore. After signing, I turned to leave, but behind me, I heard Willow ask the delivery man, "Is there only this one?" "None for me. We're going to the same university. It should have arrived together." The delivery man confirmed. "Yes, only this one." Willow's brows furrowed even deeper. She called out to me as I had already taken a few steps away, "George, open it and check. Maybe my admission letter got mixed in with yours." I stopped in my tracks but didn't turn around. My voice was firm, without the slightest hesitation. "It's not in there." My certainty surprised her, and stirred a faint, inexplicable unease. "Why are you so sure?" she pressed. I took a deep breath, about to reveal the decision I had kept buried for so long. But suddenly, her phone rang. It was Makoto. The moment she answered, his weak voice came through from the other end. "Willow, where are you?" My stomach's acting up again. It hurt so much. Willow's expression changed instantly. All her attention was pulled to the call. Her tone carried a kind of urgency and concern I hadn't heard from her in a long time. "Don't be scared. Send me your location. I'll be there right away." She didn't even spare me another glance. She didn't hear the quiet yet heavy words I was about to say. "Because I changed my application. We're not going to the same university at all." She turned and hurried toward where her car was parked. I stood there, watching the direction her car disappeared into. The last ripple in my heart finally settled into stillness. After that, I began quietly preparing for my departure. Southern University was thousands of miles away. Everything would have to be arranged from scratch. Meanwhile, Willow's social media was unusually active. Every day, she posted updates, photos and videos that always included Makoto. They climbed mountains together to watch the sunrise. Makoto's arm wrapped around her shoulders, a sea of clouds rolling behind them. They went camping, sitting around a bonfire as Makoto smiled and fed her grilled skewers. They checked in at countless trendy tourist spots, posing closely for photos at every landmark. In every picture, Willow's eyes carried a relaxed, easy smile. The comments below were full of teasing. "Willow, is this an official announcement? Wishing you two forever. Makoto's amazing, he really won Willow over." I scrolled through the screen, looking at those vivid, piercing images. My chest felt heavy, like a sponge soaked with water, weighed down and damp. But strangely, there was no longer that sharp pain that once made it hard for me to breathe. So this was what it felt like, when a heart had completely died. The day I returned to school to collect my records, the sun was shining brightly. As soon as I walked through the school gates, I saw them near the notice board. Makoto had his arm around Willow's shoulders, pulling her close as he posed for photos, smiling brightly at his phone camera. Willow's expression was still somewhat cool, but the slight curve at the corner of her lips showed she was cooperating. From a distance, I watched them, and suddenly, memories of my past with Willow surfaced. It was in this very campus that we once walked hand in hand along every tree-lined path. We had hidden in corners to steal kisses. We had leaned over our desks together, planning our future, vowing with absolute certainty that we would go to Northern University together, that we would go from school uniforms to wedding vows. Those beautiful moments, almost unreal in their perfection, now felt like a distant, blurry dream. Ever since Makoto appeared, everything had changed, and between her and me, there had long been no future left. Chapter 7. I quietly turned away, avoiding them, and walked toward the back garden of the school. There stood an old banyan tree. On its trunk, our names had once been carved, mine and Willow's, with a small heart drawn beside them. Back in our first year, she had pulled me there and carefully carved them, stroke by stroke with a small knife, saying she wanted to engrave us into each other's lives. Now, I took out the key I carried with me, found that line of names, and scraped them off bit by bit, forcefully, thoroughly. Just as I finished and was about to leave, I heard Makoto's voice and footsteps behind me. "Willow, come look. I heard that if you carve your names in this grove, you'll both have a brilliant future. Let's carve one too." "Okay." I didn't turn around, but I could already imagine her nodding. Sure enough, I heard her clear voice. "Okay." Then came the faint sound of metal scraping against bark, right next to the tree where I had just erased our names. They chose another one, and carved Willow and Makoto side by side. I kept my back to them the entire time, saying nothing. After finishing what I came to do, I put the key back into my pocket and left. Just as I reached the artificial lake at the edge of the garden, Makoto chased after me. "George, wait," he called out, holding a ring in his hand. "You dropped this." I recognized it. It was something I had accidentally left behind earlier. I reached out to take it, but Makoto pulled his hand back slightly, looking at me with a half smile. "George, The one who'll stand beside Willow in the future will only be me. You've already lost the right to stand next to her. I'll prove to you that in her heart, I'm 1,000, no, 10,000 times more important than you. I couldn't be bothered with meaningless arguments. I just wanted my belongings and to leave. Give it back. My complete indifference seemed to infuriate him. He suddenly grabbed my wrist, his voice turning sharp. Who do you think you're fooling with that act? Don't think growing up with her makes you special. Haven't you heard? A childhood sweetheart can never beat someone who suddenly appears and steals the spotlight. Willow and I are the ones destined to be together. You'll only ever be an insignificant side character in her past. Let go. My wrist hurt as I tried to pull free. I won't. We struggled by the lake, emotions running high. In the chaos, someone's foot slipped. 2 splashes rang out in quick succession, water spraying everywhere. I could swim, but the icy lake water wrapped around my body instantly, and my calf cramped violently. I cramped. I couldn't move. My body sank uncontrollably. Water rushed into my nose, and the suffocating sensation closed in on me, just as despair consumed me. I saw Willow on the shore jump into the water without hesitation. At that moment, the dying spark in my heart flickered faintly, but in the next second, that spark was completely extinguished. Willow swam straight toward Makoto, grabbed his arm, and pulled him toward the shore with all her strength. Without once turning back to look at me, she pushed Makoto onto the bank. He clutched her arm, coughing, and deliberately said loudly, "Willow. George." George is still in the water. Willow turned her head and glanced at me, struggling, sinking, on the verge of disappearing beneath the surface. Her voice came through the sound of water, clear enough to shatter my last hope. We've already broken up. Whether he lives or dies, what does it have to do with me? Then she supported the still-shaken Makoto and walked away, leaving me alone in the cold, darkening water. As my strength slowly faded away, when I woke up again, all I saw was the white ceiling of a hospital. Several classmates were gathered around my bed. When they saw me open my eyes, they all let out a sigh of relief. "George, you're awake. Thank God, you scared us to death." It turned out that a classmate had happened to pass by the lake, saw me unconscious near the shore, and quickly called for help. They pulled me out and rushed me to the hospital. "We tried calling your parents, but couldn't reach them, so we took it upon ourselves to call Willow," one of them explained awkwardly. Another added, his tone filled with disbelief and dissatisfaction. "We told her you were in the hospital and asked her to come, but she actually said that you've already broken up, and that your situation has nothing to do with her." I listened quietly, my face expressionless. Only when I heard the words, "nothing to do with her," did the corner of my lips twitch slightly, pulling into a pale, self-mocking smile. Chapter 8. Look, this was the girl I had loved for so many years. When her heart turned cold, it was harder than the stones at the bottom of the lake. Seeing me like this, my classmates felt both awkward and distressed, each of them trying to comfort me. I forced myself to sit up and gave them a reassuring smile. "Willow is right," I said. "We've already completely broken up. From now on, we probably won't have any contact anymore." They exchanged glances, still unable to believe it. "How is that possible? Didn't you two agree to go to Northern University together?" I lowered my gaze and said softly, "No, she and Makoto are going to Northern University. I applied to." Before I could finish, the ward door burst open with a loud bang. "George." My parents rushed in, faces full of anxiety. "How are you? How did you fall into the lake out of nowhere? You scared your mother to death." They surrounded me, asking about my condition with concern, and I reassured them one by one. For a brief moment, I thought I saw a familiar slender figure flash past the doorway, wearing that red dress I knew so well. But when I looked again, the doorway was empty, only doctors, nurses, and patients passing by. After confirming I was fine, my parents completed the discharge procedures. I thanked my classmates and said goodbye. Over the next week, I stayed home to recover, while also contacting a senior student from Southern University through a freshman group chat, learning about the school and even booking my flight in advance. My parents watched me busy myself, hesitating several times before finally speaking. "George. Willow's family is hosting a banquet to celebrate her admission. They invited our whole family. What do you think?" My hands paused for a moment while packing. Then I nodded calmly. "All right, I'll go." On the day of the banquet, my parents and I arrived on time with gifts. When I saw Willow, we simply nodded at each other in greeting. Not a single word exchanged. Both families immediately understood what was going on. The kids must have had another falling out. Willow's father patted my shoulder and tried to smooth things over with a smile. "George, you're here. Come, have a seat inside. Willow's just a bit stubborn. You two are about to start university together, so be more understanding with each other. Don't stay mad." Willow's mother also held her hand and said, "You're a girl, be more considerate toward George." Willow stood there with a cold expression, saying nothing. Her gaze didn't even land on me. I took a light breath, about to explain that we had already broken up. But suddenly, a commotion came from the entrance. Makoto walked in, holding a large bouquet of bright sunflowers. Looking radiant, he politely greeted Willow's parents. "Hello, Uncle, Auntie, Willow. I'm here to congratulate you." The moment Willow saw him, her previously cold expression melted like ice thawing. Even her eyes softened. She didn't wait for her parents to respond. Naturally, she said to him, "You're here? Come in." Then she led Makoto straight into the hall, leaving me and my parents standing there, completely ignored. Willow's parents' smiles instantly turned awkward. They quickly tried to recover. "Oh, please come in. Have a seat." Throughout the entire evening, my parents' eyes rarely left Willow and Makoto. They watched as Willow carefully picked food for him, as she subtly blocked drinks for him when others tried to toast him. As the two of them leaned close, whispering intimately, their expressions gradually shifted from confusion to understanding, and finally to deep heartache. Taking advantage of a moment to go to the restroom, my mother pulled me aside and asked softly, "George, tell Mom the truth. What's going on between you and Willow? The way she's acting with that boy, is she trying to make you jealous? You've grown up together for so many years, don't let something small turn into a big problem." I thought of all the on and off breakups over the years. Every brief reconciliation was followed by even more blatant favoritism and hurt. I shook my head. My tone was tired, but firm. "Mom, I'm not upset. I've really decided to end things with her completely." I took a deep breath and finally revealed the decision I had buried for so long. "Actually, I changed my application. I'm not going to Northern University anymore. I'm going to Southern University." My parents looked at me in shock, unable to speak for a moment. Southern University? That was thousands of miles away from Northern University, north and south, worlds apart. Just as they were about to say something, a sudden loud crash and a wave of commotion erupted from the center of the banquet hall. Chapter 9. A massive crystal chandelier suddenly came crashing straight down from the ceiling, and directly beneath it stood Willow and Makoto, who had just been laughing together. In that split second of life and death, Willow reacted almost on instinct. She spun around sharply and used her entire body to shield Makoto completely. Bang! The heavy chandelier slammed hard onto her back and head, shards of glass scattering everywhere. Willow let out a muffled groan as blood instantly poured from her forehead and back. She staggered for a moment, then collapsed heavily onto the ground, losing consciousness. The scene instantly descended into chaos. Screams, cries, and shouts tangled together. The ambulance arrived quickly and rushed Willow, covered in blood and unconscious, to the hospital. My parents, seeing my pale face, pulled me along and followed. The operating room light stayed on for a long time. It wasn't until the doctor came out and announced that the surgery was successful and that she was no longer in life-threatening danger that everyone finally let out a sigh of relief. Seeing how absent-minded and devastated I looked, my parents sighed. In the end, they said nothing and took me home. On the way back, the car was filled with silence. After a long while, my mother finally spoke softly. "George, have you really thought it through? Are you sure you want to break up with Willow?" I looked out at the night scenery speeding past the window and slowly, very slowly, smiled. The smile was filled with exhaustion and a sense of release. "Yeah, I've thought it through, Mom. You saw it today too. The person she likes hasn't been me for a long time." Through the rearview mirror, my parents looked at my calm yet pale profile, their hearts aching unbearably. The two of them remained silent for a long time, as if they had made up their minds about something. My father finally said, "George, since you've made your decision, your mother and I will support you. As it happens, I've also been planning to expand the company's business to South City. In that case, we'll just move the whole family there, both the company and our home. That way, we can also stay by your side while you attend university." I froze, looking at the unconditional support in my parents' eyes. My vision instantly blurred with tears. I nodded heavily, my throat choked with emotion. Okay, it seemed that from now on, Willow and I would truly never see each other again. Over the next half-month, our whole family quietly prepared for the move. It wasn't until the day of departure that we brought gifts and went to Willow's house to say goodbye. When they heard that our entire family was moving away, and that I once again firmly and decisively stated that I had completely broken up with Willow, her parents were utterly shocked and filled with regret. "George, we've long treated you as our own son-in-law." Willow was just confused for a moment. Willow's mother held my hand, her eyes already reddening. I simply shook my head calmly. My tone was gentle, yet distant. "Auntie, feelings from childhood don't really count. We'll both meet better people in the future." Willow's parents tried to persuade me again and again, but seeing that I had made up my mind, they could only sigh in resignation. Seeing that time was almost up, Willow's mother took out her phone. "I'll call Willow right now. I'll have her come back to see you off. That child, ever since she recovered a bit, she's been out all day." The phone rang for a long time before it was finally answered. Willow, where are you? Come back quickly. George is leaving for university today. Come to the airport. Before she could finish, Willow cut her off directly. He's leaving today. Oh, Makoto and I are going to school together tomorrow. If he wants to leave, he can leave on his own. I don't have time to see him. Bye. Before Willow's mother could say anything else, the call ended, leaving only the cold, monotonous busy tone. Chapter 10. Willow's mother held the phone that had just been hung up on, her face alternating between pale and flushed, utterly embarrassed. Seeing this, I instead stepped forward, gently placing an arm around her shoulders. Auntie, it's okay. Our flight is about to take off. Thank you for your kindness. Since she's busy, let's just leave it. It's not a big deal anyway. My parents quickly stepped in to smooth things over as well. In the end, amidst awkwardness and quiet sighs, our family said goodbye to Willow's parents and headed to the airport. The plane soared into the sky. Through the window, I watched the city I had lived in for 18 years gradually shrink, blur, and finally disappear beneath the clouds. Strangely, my heart felt calm. I slowly closed my eyes. Goodbye forever. Willow. On the other side, Willow accompanied Makoto to North City University as promised. She helped him prepare his daily necessities and arranged his dorm, everything done thoroughly and attentively. Willow. All done. Let's go eat together, Makoto asked with a smile after finishing up. No, I'm tired. I want to go back and rest, Willow replied, rubbing her temples, her tone somewhat flat. For some reason, ever since she received that phone call from her mother yesterday, she had felt a vague, indescribable irritation lingering in her chest. All right then, Makoto said, a little disappointed, but he didn't push further. Willow walked out of the dorm building. The afternoon sun was a bit harsh. Standing under a tree, she subconsciously took out her phone and opened a chat window that had been silent for a long time. After such a long Cold War, his anger should have subsided by now. This time, she had ignored him for so long, even kissed Makoto in front of him. The lesson should have been more than enough. It was time to give him a way out and bring up getting back together. Thinking of the expression George might have when he saw her, hurt yet unable to hide his delight, the corners of her lips unconsciously curved into a faint, controlled smile. After this, he probably wouldn't dare to casually bring up breaking up ever again. However, she didn't know which dorm building he had been assigned to. With that thought, Willow put away her phone and walked straight to the freshman registration desk. Hello, could you help me check which dorm building George from the computer science department is assigned to? The senior student searched on the computer for a moment, then looked up with a puzzled expression. Sorry, but there's no one named George on the freshman list. The faint smile on Willow's face instantly froze. No, she frowned. That's impossible. He's definitely part of this year's freshman. Check again carefully. The senior checked the list again thoroughly, even pulling up the freshman rosters for all departments in the university, then shook her head firmly. He's really not there. Not just computer science, there's no one with that name in any department. A strong sense of unease suddenly gripped Willow's heart, swift and abrupt. She suddenly recalled the way I had snatched back the admission letter that day, and the sentence I had started to say before being interrupted by Makoto's call, words she hadn't heard clearly. A ridiculous yet chilling thought crashed into her mind without warning, sending coldness through her entire body. Almost roughly, she pulled out her phone. Her fingertips trembled slightly, though she didn't even realize it, as she dialed the number she knew by heart. But from the receiver came only a cold, mechanical female voice. Sorry, the number you have dialed does not exist. Refusing to believe it, she dialed again. Once, twice. The same emotionless voice echoed every time. She sent a message on WeChat, only for it to instantly turn into a cold red exclamation mark. Message sent, but rejected by the recipient. Either the number no longer existed, or she had been blocked. For the first time, she clearly realized that the breakup George had mentioned that day might not have been just another bout of temper like she had assumed. Willow. Makoto's bright voice came from behind as he jogged over. Naturally, he reached out, trying to put an arm around her shoulders. There you are. I needed your help with something. I've been looking for you for a while. Willow suddenly slapped his hand away, the force so strong that Makoto staggered slightly. The bright smile on his face froze instantly. Get lost, she snapped, her voice low, her eyes filled with uncontrollable irritation, and a kind of panic she herself had never experienced before. Chapter 11. At this moment, Willow had no mind to deal with Makoto at all. Ignoring the stunned Makoto, she turned and walked aside, frantically dialing every mutual contact she had with George. Hello, Uncle Wong. Has George contacted you? Do you know where he went? Auntie Lee, this is Willow. About George. Fatty, when was the last time you saw George? Do you know he changed his number? One call after another went out, but not a single response was what Willow wanted to hear. Willow, what's going on between you and George? He didn't tell me anything. No idea. Didn't he already receive his admission letter? He should have gone to register. Right. Changed his application. No way. Weren't you two supposed to go to North City University together? He changed his number. We really don't know. The boy she had watched grow up since childhood, the one she had always believed would still be there the moment she turned around, had vanished like a drop of water into the ocean. Gone without a trace. All the familiar ties had been severed overnight, cleanly and completely, by his own hands. She couldn't even reach George's parents anymore. When she called her own home to ask, the answer she got was, George's entire family had moved away. At that moment, it felt like a thunderbolt crashing down on her. Willow, what's going on? You really can't reach George? A friend she used to game with messaged her. Did you two fight that badly this time? Willow stared at the words on the screen, her fingers tightening until her knuckles turned white. Was it just a fight? Every time before, when he brought up breaking up, she would coax him back. Later, even a perfunctory message from her was enough. He would always return to her side. She had long grown used to his inability to leave her, used to that sense of security, taking him for granted. She thought this time would be no different. She deliberately ignored him, deliberately grew close to Makoto, even kissed Makoto in front of him. She wanted to teach him a lesson, wanted him to never dare casually mention breaking up again. She had never imagined that he would really leave, and leave so decisively, so completely, without leaving her even the slightest chance to make things right. Willow, Makoto approached again cautiously, his eyes slightly red, looking as if he had suffered a great injustice. Don't be like this. I'm scared. George is probably just still angry. In a few days, when he calms down. Shut up, Willow snapped, suddenly turning toward him. Her gaze was dark and frightening. If it weren't for you. She stopped abruptly halfway through. If it weren't for Makoto, what? If it weren't for that phone call that happened to come at that moment. If it weren't for all the times he needed her company. The root of the problem wasn't Makoto. It was her. It was how she had ignored George's feelings again and again for Makoto's sake. How she had repeatedly tested his limits. How she had clung to that damn certainty that he would never leave. Her heart felt like it was being gripped tightly by an invisible hand, suddenly constricting, sending waves of suffocating pain through her chest. In her 18 years of smooth sailing, this was the first time she had tasted something called loss. So bitter, so sharp. She shoved Makoto aside and staggered toward the roadside, flagging down a taxi. Where to? The driver asked. Willow opened her mouth, only to realize she had nowhere to go. She didn't know where George's family had moved to. She didn't even know which city he had gone to. The world was so big. If he was determined to avoid her, where could she possibly find him? Just drive, she said, leaning back against the seat, closing her eyes in exhaustion. Her voice was hoarse. Her phone kept vibrating, messages from Makoto, one after another, asking where she had gone, why she wasn't replying, filled with dependence and complaints. Before, she might have found that dependence comforting, but now, it only made her feel suffocated and irritated. She swiped away the notifications, even wanting to turn off her phone entirely, but she couldn't. She was still waiting for some mutual friend to offer even the slightest clue, waiting for a slim miracle that might let her reach him. Night fell. The taxi wandered aimlessly through the city, neon lights flashing outside the window, yet unable to illuminate the darkness in her heart. She kept scrolling through old chat records she once found clingy, records she hadn't even bothered to open before. His daily sharing, his complaints, even his occasional little moods. Now, they had all become luxuries. She opened his WeChat profile. The background had turned blank. That cold dividing line felt like an insurmountable chasm, completely separating their two worlds. George, she murmured unconsciously, where are you? The only answer was the rushing sound of the wind outside the car window. For the first time, she felt such helplessness and fear, as if the most important part of her life had been forcibly torn away, leaving her empty. It turned out, the one who had truly been left behind was her. Chapter 12. When the plane landed, South City was draped in a light rain. A damp breeze carrying the scent of an unfamiliar city rushed toward me. I took a deep breath and tightened my grip on the handle of my suitcase. Just like that, a new life began. South University was located in the center of this southern city. The campus was shaded by rows of plane trees, exuding a gentle elegance quite different from the bold atmosphere of the north. After completing my enrollment procedures, I collected my dorm key and carefully unpacked my belongings one by one. I deliberately avoided checking my phone. I knew that the class group chat must still be buzzing with discussions about Willow and Makoto, but those things had nothing to do with me anymore. I took out a new SIM card, removed the old one, and threw it away without hesitation. The next day, the dorm grew lively. The other 3 roommates arrived one after another. They came from all over the country, each with different personalities, yet all friendly. We shared local specialties from our hometowns, chatting noisily about our expectations for this new chapter of life. I listened with a smile, occasionally responding. Strangely, being surrounded by strangers gave me a sense of security I had never felt before. The club recruitment fair was in full swing along the Central Avenue. Dragged along by my roommates through the bustling crowd, my gaze was suddenly drawn to a relatively quiet tent not far away, in front of the Street Dance Club's banner. I stopped. "Hey, are you interested in street dance?" a gentle voice asked. The one speaking was a girl in a white dress. She wore a staff badge on her chest and was organizing registration forms on the table, her tone casual and natural. I nodded. "Yeah, our club has a really good atmosphere. Beginners are totally welcome," she said, lifting her head to look at me. She didn't scrutinize me, simply handed me a form with a friendly smile. "Want to give it a try? There'll be a simple interview next week, mostly just to meet everyone. No need to be nervous." I hesitated for a moment, then took the form. "Thank you, senior. My name is Anna, 3rd year, computer science," she said with a smile, casually handing me a pen. "You can fill it out here." At that moment, another club member rushed over. "Anna, the speakers seem to have a problem. Can you take a look?" "Okay, coming," Anna replied. Then she gave me an apologetic smile. "Sorry, go ahead and fill it out. If you have questions, you can ask the others." I lowered my head, completed the form, and handed it to another senior. As I left the tent, I subconsciously glanced back. Anna was crouching beside the speakers, focused on checking the wiring. On the day of the interview, I arrived a bit early and waited by the window. "George?" a familiar voice called out. I turned around and saw Anna walking over from the stairway. "Anna, senior." I straightened up. "You're here early," she said, walking over with a gentle tone, as if we had known each other for a long time. "Don't be nervous. The instructors leading the group are all easygoing. They'll just check your physical coordination and sense of rhythm." I nodded. "Oh, right." She seemed to remember something and took out a card from her bag. "This is the club's group QR code. Add it. It'll make it easier to notify you about activity times and locations." "Okay, thank you, senior." The interview process was just as she had said, not strict at all. When I was younger, I had accompanied Willow to hobby classes. After performing a few basic moves, I earned approving looks from the seniors. After it ended, I walked out of the classroom and let out a soft breath. Just as I was about to head back to the dorm, my phone screen lit up with a new friend request. The remark was simple, "Anna." I accepted it. Soon after, she sent a message. "You did well in the interview. Welcome to the Street Dance Club," smiley face. I held my phone, my fingers pausing on the screen for a moment before replying. "Thank you, senior." There was no further reply, but this brief interaction felt like a small stone dropped into a calm lake, sending out the faintest ripple in my heart. I put away my phone, wrapped my coat tighter around myself, and blended into the sparse crowd of South University at night. The streetlights stretched my shadow long. This road ahead, I would walk it alone, slowly, and with determination. Chapter 13. The computer science curriculum was even more demanding than I had imagined. Every morning, my classmates and I were already in the library, studying calculus, linear algebra, and the dull yet indispensable C programming language. Sheets of scratch paper filled with calculations often piled up into thick stacks, and the afternoons were consumed by endless practical exercises. My body was exhausted, yet my heart felt a strange sense of calm fulfillment. Those memories buried deep inside, the ones I didn't want to touch, were temporarily shut out. My roommates were all great. They would go together to squeeze into the noisy cafeteria, whisper gossip after lights out, and when I occasionally stared blankly out the window, they would silently understand not to disturb me, only quietly placing a cup of warm coffee on my desk. This perfect balance of companionship and distance made me feel both comfortable and grateful. The Street Dance Club held activities twice a week. As the president, Anna showed up almost every time. She wasn't an art student, but a third-year computer science major with a heavy workload. Whenever she appeared in the practice room, she usually had that black laptop bag slung over her shoulder, as if she had just rushed over from the lab or the library. There was a sense of composure and thoughtfulness in the way she handled things, something beyond her age. She would coordinate the venue in advance, check the sound equipment, prepare disposable cups for members who forgot to bring water, and during breaks, casually bring up interesting campus tidbits or useful information. For general electives next semester, Professor Lee's Western Art History course has a great reputation. The grading is fair, and it's not too hard to get into. The window seats in Library Zone A have the most outlets, good if you need to use a laptop for a long time. The dessert shop just outside the south gate. Turn right, their double-layer milk pudding is authentic, but it gets crowded on weekends. She always shared these things casually. Her kindness was measured, never overly enthusiastic, and she never pried into my past or personal matters. One time after a club activity, a sudden downpour began outside. I was about to dash back to the dorm with my jacket over my head when a black long-handled umbrella was silently handed to me. It was Anna. She shook the other folding umbrella in her hand and said, I brought two. You can take this bigger one, the rain's heavy. The small one won't be enough. I paused, instinctively wanting to refuse, but she added, I'm heading toward the library anyway, it's on the way. As if seeing through my hesitation, she had already given a reason that was impossible to refuse, one that wouldn't make me feel burdened. You can return it tomorrow during club activities. Thank you, senior. I accepted the umbrella, still carrying a trace of warmth. You're welcome. Anna smiled, opened her umbrella, and walked into the rain, holding that sturdy umbrella. I walked back to the dorm as raindrops pattered loudly against its surface. A long-lost sense of ease wrapped around me, cool and fresh, like the air after rain. There was no careful guessing, no hot and cold emotional games, no suffocating control or possessiveness, only equal respect, appropriate care, and clear boundaries. It made me feel safe, and it made me slowly begin to believe that after leaving the shadow that had loomed over my entire adolescence, the world outside was vast and open. I started to immerse myself more in club activities. When facing difficulties with elective courses, I would remember Anna's suggestions and give them a try. Occasionally, when we crossed paths on campus, I would take the initiative to nod and greet her, even exchanging a few casual words about the weather or classes. There were still moments, deep in the quiet of night, when a faint emptiness would stir in my heart, but the pain was slowly becoming duller, blurring away, little by little. Chapter 14. Willow's aloofness became well known throughout the campus. After realizing that George had truly given up on her, it was as if she had lost all motivation to move forward. Makoto's messages and calls continued to pour in tirelessly. Her screen lit up again and again, carrying the kind of dependence she once found comforting but now only suffocating. Willow, want to go to a lecture with me this afternoon? How about dinner tonight? I found an amazing Japanese place. Why aren't you replying to me again? Willow glanced at them, swiped her finger across the screen, and directly set the notifications to silent. So Makoto started showing up in person, outside her classroom or downstairs at her dorm, holding carefully chosen bouquets, wearing that flawless, handsome smile. Willow only gave him a cold glance, her steps not even pausing for him. I'm busy. No time. Go by yourself. Her replies were brief, leaving no room for negotiation. The brightness on Makoto's face gradually faded, replaced by disbelief, grievance, and resentment. But she had no energy to care about his emotions. A nearly obsessive thought had taken root in her mind, and spread with overwhelming force until it occupied every corner of her thoughts. She was going to find George, immediately, right now. Once the thought appeared, it became impossible to suppress. After going through great effort, she finally found out that George was now at South University. Transfer. It was the fastest and most direct method she could think of. She acted almost instantly, calling the admissions office and academic affairs department of South University, asking again and again about transfer procedures and required documents. She dug out every certificate and transcript she could find, preparing all kinds of supporting materials. The news quickly reached her family. On the phone, her father's voice trembled with suppressed anger. Willow, have you lost your mind? Do you think North City University is a place you can just walk away from whenever you want? Is this a joke to you? Her mother's voice was filled with tears and confusion. Willow, what's wrong with you? Did you have a fight with George? Whatever it is, can't you talk it out? Why does it have to come to transferring schools? Willow stood on the balcony, gripping her phone, staring at the gray sky outside. Her voice was hoarse, and more stubborn than ever before. I have to go. Why? Give me a reason that can convince me. Her father's voice rose sharply. A reason? Was she supposed to say that she had lost the boy she once believed would never leave, and now wanted to chase him back at all costs? She couldn't say that, and even if she did, it would never be a valid reason to convince her parents. There's no reason. I just have to go to South University. You. Her father was so furious he could barely speak. If you dare to act recklessly, don't expect a single cent from this family ever again. Fine. Willow's voice was cold and resolute, carrying a sense of burning all bridges. Even if you don't support me, I'm still going. The argument was long and intense. Her parents took turns trying to persuade her, from her future and prospects to the family's reputation, from practical considerations to emotional ties. Willow simply listened in silence, then blocked all their words with one sentence. I've made up my mind. She even began privately contacting agencies, inquiring about the possibility of loans, preparing for the worst. Before the pressure from her family could settle, Makoto somehow found out about her plan to transfer to South University. He rushed up to her, his carefully styled hair damp with sweat, grabbing her arm in near hysteria. Why? Willow, tell me why. Can't you forget him? What's so great about him? He doesn't even want you anymore, and you still want to chase after him. Willow forcefully shook off his hand. Her eyes were filled with undisguised disgust and coldness. My business has nothing to do with you. How does it not? Makoto shouted. I like you. I've been by your side for so long. What has George ever done except threaten to break up? Shut up. Willow cut him off sharply, her gaze as sharp as a blade. Makoto, listen carefully. There has never been any possibility between us. Not before, and not in the future. Stop wasting your time on me. Her words struck him like a heavy slap. Makoto stood frozen, his face pale, lips trembling, unable to say another word. No obstacle, no opposition, nothing could shake her determination. The procedures moved forward with difficulty, and when she finally received the acceptance letter from South University and boarded the flight to South City, she leaned against the window. There was no trace of reluctance in her heart, only a barren, desperate urgency, as if she had bet everything on this one decision. Chapter 15. She had no mind to admire the unfamiliar campus scenery. The moment she arrived, she began frantically asking around for George, the computer science schedule, the activity rooms he frequented, possible dorm buildings. She searched like she had lost her mind, chasing every possible clue. Finally, one evening, she learned that the street dance club and another club were having a small joint rehearsal. She practically ran there. The rehearsal room had large windows, glowing with bright, warm light. Through the glass, she saw at a glance the figure etched into her very bones. George. He was wearing a simple black t-shirt, his hair slicked back, with a few loose strands falling over his forehead. He tilted his head slightly, listening to someone beside him. Anna held 2 bottles of water, handing one to George as she smiled and said something. George listened, the corners of his lips curving into a natural arc, his eyes calm, even carrying a hint of relaxed amusement. It was an expression Willow hadn't seen on his face for a very long time. Her heart clenched painfully, sour and swollen, and a surge of overwhelming impulse drove her to push open the rehearsal room door. George. Her voice rang out abruptly, instantly shattering the peaceful atmosphere inside. All eyes turned toward this uninvited guest. I turned my head at the sound. The moment I saw her, that faint yet genuine smile on my face vanished without a trace. My gaze lingered on her for less than a second before shifting away expressionlessly. I didn't even say a word to Anna. I simply picked up my things and walked straight out through another door. No questioning, no anger, no grievance. Only complete, icy indifference. Willow froze in place, her outstretched hand still suspended in midair. All the words she had prepared stuck in her throat. She watched George's resolute figure disappear, then turned to look at Anna beside her, whose expression had already returned to calm, now observing her with a hint of scrutiny. A cruel realization poured over her like icy water, sending bone-deep chills through her entire body. Without her, George could truly live well, even better. And in George's world, someone new, someone exceptional, had already appeared. The person who could make him smile so easily was no longer her. Willow's arrival was like a massive stone thrown into a tranquil lake. She became almost inescapable. In the morning, in front of the teaching building, she would appear carrying a paper bag from my favorite breakfast shop, still steaming. Trying to press it into my hands, she would say, George, you definitely haven't eaten breakfast. In the afternoon, outside the activity room, she would wait holding a large bouquet of fresh white roses. Drawing glances from passing students, she would say, I remember you said white looked the best. In the evening, on the tree-lined path back to the dorm, she would suddenly step out from the shadows, blocking my way, her eyes bloodshot, her voice hoarse as she repeated over and over, George, let's talk. Just 5 minutes. Okay, I know I was wrong. Every time, my reaction was exactly the same. My gaze would not stay on her face for more than a second. As for the gifts held out in front of me, I would simply walk around them indifferently. If Willow insisted on blocking me, I would say calmly, no need, move, you're disturbing me. Once, when Willow tried again, in front of everyone, to grab my wrist, I shook her off sharply. My voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for the murmuring crowd around us to hear. Miss Willow, we're not familiar. Please stop doing things that cause trouble. Those words were like ice-tipped needles, stabbing straight into Willow's heart. Rumors began to spread quietly across campus like creeping vines. Have you heard? That gorgeous girl who keeps coming to see George is his ex-girlfriend. They were childhood sweethearts, right? Why did they break up? Looks like she regrets it and chased him all the way to Nan University. But George seems to really dislike her. Speculation and curious gazes surrounded me constantly. In response, I only threw myself even harder into my major courses and club activities, wrapping myself in relentless busyness, as if as long as I never stopped, the noise could never truly invade my world. And within this suffocating entanglement, Anna's presence became a silent yet steady barrier. She never once asked about Willow. She simply happened to pass by on her bicycle when I was once again blocked by Willow at the intersection on my way back to the dorm. My face pale, my fingertips trembling slightly. Chapter 16. George. She stopped a few steps away, balancing on one foot. Her tone natural. I was just looking for you. The publicity department urgently needs the original photos from our last event. They asked me to bring you over. Are you free now? Her voice instantly broke the tense standoff. I nodded immediately and walked quickly toward her. In the cafeteria, Willow ignored the stares around her and forcefully sat down across from me. I set down my chopsticks, about to stand up and leave, when Anna and a few club members walked over with their trays. No one sitting here, right? Anna smiled, gesturing to the empty seat beside me, naturally placing herself between Willow and me. Then she turned to discuss the programming competition that had just ended with her companions, easing my awkwardness and completely ignoring Willow's face, which had darkened as if it could drip water. Each of these perfectly timed interventions was like pouring another bucket of oil onto the blazing fire of Willow's jealousy. She began to escalate. She followed more closely, appeared more frequently, gave more expensive gifts, and made more intense apologies. Willow even started investigating Anna. She said, "George, stay away from her. Do you even know what kind of person she is? What gives her the right? Can all those years we had really compare to someone you've only known for a few months? Have you fallen for her? Answer me." Faced with her increasingly unhinged questioning and entanglement, my response grew only colder. My heart seemed to have truly turned into a block of ice that could never be warmed again. No matter how hysterical she became, no matter how she cast aside all her pride to beg desperately, it could no longer stir even the slightest emotion in me. Willow stood beneath the tree, watching as I once again left without hesitation with Anna. Not even a single trace of my peripheral gaze was given to her. Chapter 17. Rumors spread silently like creeping vines. I tried my best to block them out, throwing all my energy into club activities, but what was meant to come could never truly be avoided. The cafeteria was bustling that afternoon. I had just sat down with my roommates when a sharp male voice cut through the noise. "George, you really know how to put on an act." All eyes were instantly drawn over. Makoto stood in the center of the cafeteria, his handsome face filled with undisguised jealousy and contempt. He strode straight to my table, his finger nearly jabbing into my face. "You couldn't win Willow over, so you decided to disappear? Plain pitiful. Acting all high and mighty, hiding all the way out here. Do you think that'll make her unable to forget you?" Makoto's voice was sharp and cutting, every word dripping with venom. "All you know how to do is play these push-and-pull mind games, right? You were the one who broke up in the first place. Now that she's chased after you, you must be feeling pretty proud of yourself, huh?" The fingers holding my chopsticks tightened slightly, the knuckles turning pale, but my face remained expressionless. The whispers around us grew louder, filled with curiosity, scrutiny, and even a hint of malice, all focused on me. Makoto shouted, "What else could this be if not a staged act?" Seeing that I didn't respond, his arrogance only grew. His voice rose even higher. "I'm telling you, stop wasting your tricks. You're nothing but this student." A calm yet unquestionable voice cut him off. Anna had appeared at some point. She stepped forward just enough to shield me behind her, blocking Makoto's aggressive gaze. Her expression remained as gentle as ever, but her eyes were still as water, carrying an unyielding firmness. "First, this is a public place. Please mind your behavior. You are seriously disturbing other students' meals." Her voice wasn't loud, but it clearly overpowered the surrounding noise. "Second, based on your baseless accusations and personal attacks just now, this already constitutes public insult. According to school regulations, we have the right to demand that you stop immediately and leave." She paused, her gaze sweeping over Makoto's anger-twisted face before settling briefly on the campus security guards who had rushed over at the commotion. She gave a slight nod. "Lastly," Anna continued, her tone still steady but now edged with rare firmness, "no matter what assumptions you're making, you have no right to judge George's choices." The security guards stepped forward at once. Makoto's eyes widened in disbelief as he stared at this woman who had suddenly appeared. He trembled with rage. "You, who do you think you are? What happens between me and him is none of your business. Are you also? Who I am is irrelevant." Anna interrupted calmly, without even a ripple in her tone. "What matters is right and wrong. Please leave." I lifted my head, looking at Anna's back. A wave of bitterness surged unexpectedly to my eyes, only to be forcefully suppressed. At that moment, another figure pushed through the crowd. It was Willow. She had clearly run all the way here, her face paler than ever before. She first glanced at Makoto, who was being restrained by security, his face ashen with fury. Then she turned sharply toward me, standing behind Anna with my eyes lowered. Finally, her gaze locked onto Anna's protective figure. Humiliation, anger, jealousy, they churned wildly in her eyes. "Makoto," she almost roared, grabbing his arm tightly. "Have you caused enough trouble? Who told you to come here?" "Willow." Makoto looked as if he had found a lifeline, his eyes instantly reddening as he tried to explain. "Shut up." Willow cut him off sharply, her gaze frighteningly cold. I've made it very clear, we have nothing to do with each other. My matters are none of your business. Leave Nen University immediately and don't ever show up in front of me or him again." She pointed at me, her tone resolute. Makoto was struck by the undisguised disgust and harshness in her eyes. His face turned deathly pale, and he couldn't say another word. Under the escort of security, he left the cafeteria in a daze. The center of the commotion suddenly emptied. Willow stood there, her chest heaving violently. She had dealt with Makoto and even publicly drawn a clear line. She looked at me, opening her mouth, as if wanting to explain, to apologize, to beg for even the slightest response. She thought, this time, she must have done the right thing. She had protected me. She had driven away the person who hurt me. Chapter 18. All eyes were focused on me, waiting for my reaction. Yet I simply stood up quietly. I didn't even glance at Willow, as if her intense declaration just now, that almost humble wait for a response, had nothing to do with me at all. I merely turned to Anna and said, "Senior, thank you, let's go." Willow's outstretched hand froze in midair, every unspoken word solidifying in her throat. A crushing wave of despair and cold slammed into her chest, shattering the last trace of her futile hope. However, the surface calm didn't last long. Makoto's obsessive persistence didn't fade after being humiliated in public. Instead, it twisted into an even more relentless form of entanglement. He stopped trying to cause scenes in public and instead began lurking. He figured out Willow's schedule around the academic buildings she frequented, the library, even outside the women's dormitory. His ghost-like figure could always be seen. He no longer shouted or caused a scene. He simply stared at her with eyes full of grievance, resentment, and accusation, questioning her again and again. "Willow, why are you treating me like this? You promised you'd take care of me. Have you forgotten? Give me an answer, or I won't leave." This silent, persistent harassment was even more unsettling than hysterical outbursts. Willow's patience had long run out. She responded with cold indifference, quickening her pace to shake him off, but he would always reappear. After class, Willow returned to the dorm with her roommates. The moment she pushed the door open, a scent of perfume that didn't belong there hit her face. Makoto was actually sitting by her desk, his fingers unconsciously rubbing against an open textbook of hers. Her roommates exchanged looks, their expressions unpleasant. The atmosphere in the dorm was awkward and tense. "Willow." This, one roommate couldn't help but speak, her tone clearly carrying dissatisfaction and irritation at being disturbed. Willow's face darkened instantly. Without saying a word, she strode forward and grabbed Makoto's wrist, almost dragging him. Under the stunned gaze of her roommates and in dead silence, she pulled him out of the dorm, stumbling down the stairs, heading straight toward the school gate. "Willow, where are you taking me? Let go." Makoto struggled. Willow ignored him completely, her jaw clenched tight, an oppressive aura radiating from her. Only after dragging him to a relatively secluded alley outside the campus did she finally fling his hand away. Makoto rubbed his reddened wrist. "Willow, what gives you the right to treat me like this? What gives me the right?" Willow finally spoke, her voice cold as ice. "Makoto, that's what I should be asking you. What gives you the right to haunt me like this? To harass my life? Disturb my roommates? Who do you think you are?" Makoto gritted his teeth. "I just want an answer. I want things to go back to how they were. It's all because of George, right? If it weren't for him, even without him, it would never be you." Willow cut him off sharply, without mercy. She shattered all of Makoto's self-deceiving illusions. "The way I used to take care of you was only because we went to the same school and because of the teacher's request. I was the one who wasn't thinking clearly. I ignored what mattered most and let you develop misunderstandings you never should have had. But I'm telling you clearly now, there is nothing between us. There was nothing in the past. There is nothing now. And there will never be anything in the future." Makoto trembled under the undisguised disgust and finality in her eyes. His face turned pale, then flushed red. "You, how can you say that? You clearly what?" Willow stepped closer, almost gritting her teeth as she spoke each word. "Makoto, my tolerance has limits. If you keep this up, following me, harassing me, even harassing the people around me." She paused, her cold gaze sweeping over his suddenly stiffened face. Her tone carried a final, unquestionable warning. "I don't mind laying out everything you've done, one by one, including how you accidentally spilled juice on the clothes George gave me, how you just happened to fall down the stairs, and what you said about George behind his back, all of it. I'll compile everything exactly as it happened and post it on the school forum, and send it to all the relevant teachers and your faculty." She looked straight at him. "Go ahead and guess, when that happens, will your scholarship, your outstanding student title, and that graduate recommendation spot you've been dreaming about still be waiting for you?" Chapter 19. The color drained completely from Makoto's face in an instant. His lips trembled, and for the first time, genuine fear appeared in his eyes. He knew better than anyone that Willow would do exactly what she said. Those little schemes he once thought clever were nothing in the face of absolute capability and the threat of tearing everything apart. Once exposed, every bit of the image and prestige he had worked so hard to maintain would shatter completely. His future would be ruined. Willow, you can't. Makoto's voice shook uncontrollably. I can, Willow said firmly, without the slightest hesitation in her eyes. So put away those ridiculous thoughts and tricks. Disappear from my sight immediately. Don't let me see you again. Otherwise, you'll bear the consequences yourself. After saying that, she didn't spare another glance at his pale face or his unsteady body. She turned and left without hesitation, leaving him alone in that empty, cold alley. Makoto stood frozen in place. After a long while, as if all his strength had been drained, he slowly crouched down, burying his face in his arms. Unwillingness, resentment, fear, shame, all kinds of emotions tangled and tore at him. But he knew he had lost completely. Willow's words had cut off all his hopes and all his escape routes. He could abandon his pride, but he couldn't abandon his future. In the end, he staggered to his feet and walked step by step toward the exit of the alley, his figure disheveled and defeated. At least for a while, he would not appear in front of Willow again. Chapter 20. Willow stood under the rain outside the dormitory building. Raindrops slid down her hair, soaking her shoulders. She had already lost count of how many times she had waited in vain. Each time that familiar figure appeared, he would walk past her without even sparing a glance. Again and again, she hit a wall. Again and again, she was met with cold rejection. At first, it was frustration, unwillingness, anger. But later, in countless sleepless nights, she was forced to revisit the past in painstaking detail. In her mind, scenes surfaced uncontrollably. Makoto posting that he was in a bad mood, and she immediately abandoned George, who had been quietly upset with her, to stay on the phone with Makoto the entire night. The time she climbed over the wall to buy medicine for Makoto's bruises. Yet when George had a stomachache, she had only perfunctorily told him to drink more hot water. At the celebration banquet, when she naturally gave the sweetest centerpiece of watermelon to Makoto, and George's face had turned pale in that instant. And at that spiraling staircase, when she didn't even look at him struggling in the water and coldly said, "What does his life or death have to do with me?" Every scene was painfully vivid. Relying on his years of affection, she had recklessly squandered his tolerance, testing his limits again and again. She once thought George couldn't live without her, but in truth, it was she who couldn't live without George. Her anger and unwillingness were gradually swallowed by boundless regret and despair. She became silent. The once bold and unrestrained air around her faded, replaced by a lingering gloom and quiet heaviness in her expression. She no longer tried to block him outside classrooms or activity rooms, nor did she bring gifts he wouldn't even look at. Instead, she bought a thick stack of stationery. Every late night, after her roommates had fallen asleep, she would sit under the desk lamp and write, word by word, carefully. She folded each letter and slipped it into the mailbox beneath his dormitory building. There was no signature, but she knew he would recognize her handwriting. Once, twice, 3 times. From a distance, she watched him retrieve the letters. He took out that thick stack of pages, didn't even open them, and simply threw them into the trash bin by the roadside. The motion was smooth, without the slightest hesitation, as if what he discarded wasn't someone's painstaking emotional confession, but truly just a pile of waste paper. Standing in the shadows of a tree, Willow watched that scene. Her heart felt as if it were gripped tightly once more by an invisible hand, the pain forcing her to nearly double over. The last trace of faint hope was completely extinguished. Only then did she finally understand. Some wounds, once inflicted, can never heal. Some mistakes will never be granted the chance to be forgiven. Chapter 21. On the other side, my life seemed to gradually return to calm, but only I knew that somewhere deep inside, something had been completely frozen over. Toward any emotion that crossed a safe boundary, I instinctively felt guarded and distant. Anna still maintained a clear sense of boundaries. She never deliberately created opportunities for us to be alone, nor did she ever ask about my past or my feelings. One time, I stayed late in the activity room practicing alone. When I came out, I found it had started raining heavily outside. As I stood there, staring at the curtain of rain and wondering what to do, a familiar black umbrella was silently extended beside me. "Looks like this umbrella of mine has quite the fate with you," Anna said with a smile. "Let's go. At this hour, the cafeteria won't have anything hot left. I know a small place by the north gate that serves good hot rice noodles. Want to give it a try?" We didn't talk much. We just ate quietly, but in that warm, relaxed atmosphere, the tension in my nerves loosened in a strange, unfamiliar way. Occasionally, I would look up and see Anna's calm profile as she ate across from me. I knew Anna was wonderful, but for now, I couldn't give any kind of response. The frozen ground in my heart was too thick. It would take more time, more warmth, perhaps, before it could slowly thaw. All of this was seen clearly by Willow from afar. She watched the brief moments of ease that would occasionally appear on my face, expressions I now only showed to someone else. Her heart still ached sharply, but she could no longer summon the courage to interfere. She only watched from a distance. The annual street dance competition at Nen University had always drawn great attention. The auditorium was packed. The piece I performed was an original choreography titled Break the Cocoon. The lights went out, leaving only a single cold beam illuminating the center of the stage. Dressed in a black t-shirt, my movements were powerful yet carried an inner resilience as I moved with the music. At the climax, the music surged, and my movements grew stronger, leaping, falling, rising again and again, until it ended in an extremely difficult yet striking backward freeze. The lights blazed on. For a brief second, the entire hall was silent. Then thunderous applause erupted. I breathed slightly, straightened, and bowed to the audience. In the front left section, Anna sat clapping more enthusiastically than anyone else. Her eyes filled with undisguised admiration, and in the shadows at the very back of the auditorium, another figure stood quietly, leaning against the cold wall. Willow gazed from afar at me on stage, radiant and dazzling. She had seen me dance before, on her birthday, after her award, when I danced only for her. As applause surged like waves, she saw the confidence and calm shining in my eyes. She saw the girl named Anna in the audience, watching me with open admiration. A massive, belated realization poured over her like icy water. For the first time, she understood with absolute clarity. The boy who once had eyes only for her had been lost by her own hands. Not a temporary quarrel, not something that could be fixed with a bit of coaxing, but a true, complete loss. She would never again stand by my side, never again own my smile. A heavy despair seized her. Willow did not step forward amid the applause. She simply turned around quietly and left the auditorium. The competition result was beyond doubt. Break the Cocoon won the gold award. A few days later, I received a long, carefully wrapped box. There was no name, only a single printed line on the attached card. Congratulations. Break the Cocoon was beautiful. I opened the box. Inside was a vinyl record of the classic ballet Giselle, a rare edition long out of print. I remembered that a long time ago, during a casual club conversation, I had once mentioned how much I regretted not being able to collect this version. There had been clear longing in my words. Holding the heavy record, it felt as if something gently struck my heart. I almost immediately thought of Anna. That evening, after the club activities ended and people gradually left, I walked up to her and said softly, "Senior Anna, thank you, the record. I really like it." Anna looked up when she heard me. A trace of understanding flickered in her eyes. "I'm glad you like it. Congratulations on winning, well deserved." She looked at me, her gaze clear and open. There was care in it, admiration, perhaps even a hint of unspoken affection. But she always kept herself within the boundary, leaving the choice entirely to me. I could feel her sincerity, and I could clearly sense my heartstrings being gently stirred. Yet, I still needed time. So in the end, I only gave her a more genuine smile than before, though still keeping a slight distance, and said again softly, "Really, thank you." Anna showed no disappointment or displeasure. She simply nodded in understanding. "You're welcome. Be careful on your way back tonight." She stood there, watching me leave. Chapter 22. Willow stood beneath that familiar tree outside my dormitory, stubbornly staring at the window glowing with warm light. She knew I was inside. Her limbs gradually went numb. Only her heart remained, throbbing dully, one painful pulse after another. She recalled countless times in the past when she had angered me and waited downstairs just like this. Back then, no matter how angry I was, I would eventually soften. With reddened eyes, I would come downstairs and pull her tightly into my arms. But this time, there was nothing. Students heading out early passed by with umbrellas, casting curious or pitying glances before hurrying off. She was soaked through, shivering uncontrollably from the cold. An unnatural flush spread across her cheeks, and her head began to spin. Finally, the dormitory door opened. But it wasn't me. It was my roommate. He looked at Willow's bedraggled state, a trace of complexity flashing in his eyes. In the end, he sighed, stepped forward, and held a dry umbrella over her, shielding her from the cold rain. "Willow, you should go back," he said, his voice carrying a hint of reluctance. "George asked me to tell you. Don't bother him anymore." At that moment, the rain seemed to turn scalding, burning against her skin. Willow staggered suddenly. She understood. I truly didn't want her anymore. The version of me who would secretly feel distressed when she got caught in the rain, who would helplessly give in at even her smallest attempts to make amends, that version had long since died under her repeated favoritism and hurt. She took the umbrella, but didn't open it. Instead, she turned around and staggered away. She remained in a daze in her dorm for 2 full days. In her blurred consciousness, memories of us replayed over and over, sweet moments, arguments, until they all froze on that final image. My cold, emotionless eyes, looking at her as if she were a stranger. After she recovered, Willow seemed like a completely different person. The once sharp and flamboyant aura around her faded entirely, replaced by a stillness like stagnant water. She no longer tried to inquire about me, nor did she appear in any place where I might be. She scheduled counseling sessions at the university. Week after week, she met with a therapist. In that quiet space, for the first time, she stopped running away. Clumsily and painfully, she began to open herself up, facing the pain of mine that she had ignored for so long, reflecting on her own flaws and that ridiculous sense of self-righteousness. Nen University wasn't particularly big, nor was it small. Occasionally, we still passed by each other. At the crowded entrance of the cafeteria, between the shelves in the library, along the long avenue of plane trees leading to the teaching buildings. Sometimes she saw me first. I would be walking with Anna or my roommates, occasionally showing a faint smile. Each time she saw it, a sharp pain would still pierce her chest, but she would only silently avert her gaze and walk in another direction. Sometimes I saw her first. My gaze would pass over her calmly as I continued talking with the people beside me, naturally walking away. At the end of the semester, the faculty announced the list for the overseas exchange program with prestigious universities. Willow looked at the location on the bulletin board, a distant country across a vast ocean. There would be no memories of George, no entanglement with Makoto. It was a place where she could truly start over. She stood in front of the board in silence for a long time. Finally, she took out her phone, snapped a photo of the notice, then turned and walked toward the Office of International Exchange. Her steps were slow, but unwaveringly firm. Chapter 23. The news of Willow leaving Nen University was like a stone dropped into a calm lake, the ripples spreading far faster than anyone expected. In just a day or two, it became a hot topic on the campus forum and naturally reached the computer science department where I was. During a break between classes, a few boys gathered together, their lowered voices unable to hide their excitement and curiosity. Is it true she left? That super gorgeous girl who kept coming to see George? The list's already posted. How could it be fake? I heard she went to a top university in North America. Wow, so sudden. Wasn't she just? Shoo. Stop talking. The chatter abruptly stopped the moment I walked into the classroom. Several glances were cast toward me cautiously, carrying curiosity and a faint trace of sympathy. My steps paused almost imperceptibly before I walked to my seat as usual. My fingertips tightened slightly, creasing the edge of the page. My life went on unchanged. Only occasionally, when passing the plane tree avenue, I would unconsciously glance toward a familiar corner, but it was always empty. Another joint club rehearsal ended, and people packed up and left one after another. I lingered behind for a moment. The practice room gradually quieted down, leaving only Anna and me, as she checked the doors and windows. Let's go. That should be everything. Anna locked the last window and turned around. We walked side by side along the campus path. After a brief silence, Anna suddenly spoke, her voice calm but carrying a seriousness unlike before. George, what is it? I responded instinctively, turning my head to look at her. Anna stopped walking. There's something I think I should tell you. She paused slightly, as if choosing her words carefully. I have feelings for you that go beyond friendship. My heartbeat skipped abruptly. The hand holding my backpack strap tightened slightly. I opened my mouth, but for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Before I could organize my thoughts, Anna continued. I'm not telling you this to expect an immediate answer, nor to put any pressure on you. I simply believe that expressing my feelings sincerely is a basic form of respect, both for you and for myself. She looked into my slightly stunned eyes, her tone becoming even gentler yet firm. I know you've been through some things, and you may need a long time to adjust and prepare. That's completely okay. I'm only saying this because I don't want to hide it from you. No matter what your answer is, or how long it takes you to have one, we can continue as we are now, as ordinary friends. Nothing has to change. You don't need to feel any burden. She didn't press me, didn't test me, and showed no forcefulness. She simply placed a sincere yet restrained feeling in front of me, then returned the choice, completely and without reservation, into my hands. All the awkwardness, pressure, even resistance I had imagined dissolved quietly in her clear and measured words. Looking at the girl in front of me, the one who always appeared at just the right time, who had helped me out again and again, who cared for me silently, and who now handed me the decision entirely, a complex mix of emotion rose within me, gratitude, surprise, and a sense of relief. After a moment of silence, when I spoke again, my voice was slightly hoarse but equally sincere. Senior Anna, thank you for your honesty, and even more for your respect. I really do need some time. I understand. A gentle smile spread across Anna's lips. Her eyes were clear, without any disappointment or displeasure. No rush. Let's just stay the way we've always been. Okay, I nodded. The slight tension in my shoulders finally eased. As we continued walking, we naturally began talking about the upcoming finals and the club's plans for the next semester. The atmosphere returned to its usual ease and comfort. But something had changed. The thin veil had been gently lifted, not by a storm, but by warm sunlight. It made the air between us clearer, and gave that quiet companionship a more certain and reassuring meaning. When we reached the dorm building, Anna stopped. "Get some rest early. You too, senior." I smiled faintly and turned to head upstairs. Back in my room, I leaned against the door and raised a hand, pressing it lightly against my chest. The rhythm there was steady and strong. A heavy, stubborn past seemed to finally be fading away, and another feeling, new, bright, and built on respect, was gently knocking on the door of my heart. But this time, I no longer felt fear or resistance. Chapter 24. My life became full and well-ordered. My grades in computer science consistently ranked at the top. In the activity room, I was still the last one to leave. Within the club, I had grown from a clueless newcomer into someone capable of taking charge. Anna deliberately gave me more responsibilities in planning and organization. I always completed them meticulously, and the ideas I proposed were both innovative and practical, earning the trust and appreciation of all the members. That sense of confidence, genuine, rooted in my own abilities, gradually replaced the old need to rely on others' attention to feel my worth. My relationship with Anna still stayed within the boundaries of friendship, yet something was quietly changing. Between discussions of club matters, we would naturally talk about recent exhibitions or films. When we ran into each other in the cafeteria, we would casually sit together, our conversations drifting from academics to small, everyday moments of life. She would still offer perfectly timed advice when I encountered difficulties, but I was no longer just passively receiving it. I began sharing my own perspectives as well. A silent understanding flowed between us. Sometimes, just a glance was enough to grasp what the other hadn't said. I began, little by little, to show her the subtle emotions I rarely revealed. My frustration over a poor performance, complaints about a difficult paper, even small grumbles about the endless rain in South City. Each time, Anna would listen quietly, then offer rational insight or gentle comfort, never crossing boundaries, never missing a beat. This safe and comfortable interaction was like a gentle current, slowly softening the door of my once tightly closed heart. The warmth of my family, meanwhile, became my strongest refuge. My parents' lives in South City had stabilized, and our new home was warm and comfortable. Every weekend, as long as I didn't have rehearsals, I would go back home. The dining table was always filled with my favorite dishes. My parents never asked about my romantic life. They only cared about whether my studies were going well, whether I was sleeping enough, whether I had enough money. They would share amusing stories from their work, and we would plan short trips together. This simple and genuine family life gave me immense emotional support and a deep sense of security. I knew that no matter how stormy the world outside might be, there would always be a light left on for me, and two arms forever open to welcome me home. At the end of the semester, the Art Institute of Nan University held its annual showcase of outstanding student works. The contemporary dance piece I choreographed and led, Tracing the Light, was selected as the finale performance. On the night of the show, the art center was packed. In the audience, my parents held each other's hands tightly, their eyes shining with tears of excitement and pride. Anna sat beside them, quietly watching me on stage, radiant and brilliant, with a clear smile on her lips and a focused, bright gaze. The performance was an unprecedented success. During the subsequent awards ceremony, I went on stage as a representative of the winners. Standing under the spotlight, dressed in a simple t-shirt, I held myself upright, my gaze clear and steady as I looked toward the audience. "Thank you, everyone," I said. My voice carried through the hall, calm, yet full of strength. This honor is a summary of the past period, but more importantly, it is a new starting point. I once thought that growth meant carrying burdens and struggling forward, but here, at Nan University, I've learned another way to grow, letting go of what weighs me down, focusing on moving forward, discovering my own strength, and embracing endless possibilities. The future is like an unknown street dance. I lifted my chin slightly, a bright and confident smile spreading across my face. There may be challenges, but there is even more to look forward to. I'm ready to face it, and to create it. The audience erupted into long, enthusiastic applause. My parents wiped their eyes with relief and pride. Anna clapped steadily, her gaze never leaving me as I shone on stage. The scars of the past had not completely disappeared, but they had transformed into patterns within me, becoming part of my strength, no longer the chains that defined me. My future was unfolding, clearly, vividly, within my own hands. Chapter 25. Across the Atlantic, winter. Willow pulled her coat tighter, clutching a stack of heavy textbooks as she hurried across the empty square in front of the library. Life in a foreign country felt as if someone had pressed slow motion and mute. Without the noisy pursuits and deliberate encounters, time stretched endlessly. She began to get used to staying in the library alone until late at night, to getting through meals with coffee and cold sandwiches. Her therapy sessions continued, In that quiet room where even breathing could be heard, she learned not to armor herself with anger or avoidance. Instead, she began, clumsily but sincerely, to dissect the moments that had led to her loss. She recalled the disappointment in George's eyes again and again, her own careless indifference, and that absurd arrogance, believing he would never leave. The pain was still sharp, but she no longer tried to bury it. Instead, she learned to coexist with it, and within that persistent dull ache, she slowly reshaped her understanding of emotions and responsibility. Growth was a lonely journey. Her steps were unsteady, but she never turned back. Makoto's messages and overseas calls had been frequent during the first couple of months. The tone on the other end shifted, from grievance and complaints, to unwilling questioning, and finally to exhausted attempts to hold on. "Willow, when are you coming back? What's so great over there? Do you have someone else now? Is it really impossible for us?" Willow's responses went from brief indifference to complete silence. She had exhausted all her emotions, whether it was love, hatred, or even annoyance. She no longer wanted to waste a single fragment on him. The warmth on the other end of the phone eventually faded, sinking into the silence of unanswered messages. The last message came late one night in Beijing, containing only 2 words, "I understand." After that, there was only long, complete silence. The name that had once stirred enormous waves between her and George finally sank like a stone into the ocean, silent, unable to disturb even the slightest ripple in her life. Her world had finally become quiet. Meanwhile, on the other side of the earth, South City was bathed in warm, gentle winter sunlight. My life, once a canvas of muted gray, was gradually filled with vivid and vibrant colors. I continued to excel in computer science, gaining opportunities to participate in intercollegiate competitions and even national programming projects. I grew more confident, more radiant, earning increasing recognition. In the club, I became a senior others relied on. The pain and self-doubt that once gnawed at me had long been replaced by the fulfillment and sense of achievement built day after day. I no longer needed anyone's validation to confirm my worth. My world had become vast and steady. On an ordinary evening, Anna and I had just come out of the library. The golden glow of the sunset stretched our shadows long across the ground. We had just finished discussing plans for next semester's club exhibition. The atmosphere was relaxed and comfortable. As we walked past the well-known Lover's Hill, couples strolled nearby in pairs. Anna suddenly slowed her steps and turned to look at me, her gaze gentle yet serious. "George." "Yeah." I stopped and looked at her. The sunset cast a warm golden light across her features. "I told you before that I would wait until you were ready. Now, I want to ask you again." She paused slightly. "Would you be willing to let me stay by your side, as your girlfriend?" I looked at her. I thought of every time she appeared at just the right moment. Her unwavering sense of boundaries, her quiet support, and the clear expectation in her eyes now. I had once lost the courage to believe in love, but she had used time and action to slowly weave that courage back together. A faint smile curved my lips, and a bright, clear warmth spread through my eyes, like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Okay," I answered softly, my voice carrying a sense of ease and certainty I had never felt before. A spark of joy lit up Anna's eyes. She carefully reached out and took my hand. We didn't say anything else. We simply smiled at each other, then naturally intertwined our fingers and continued walking forward along the path bathed in sunset. Behind us lay a past we had completely left behind. Ahead of us stretched a new road, one we would walk together, filled with hope,